The words of the master. The words of the master. If it behooves you, you could go back and deal with parts 1, 2, and 3, uh, which is also in the description. Description. But we're going to now start off here with part 4, which deals with the first miracle of Messiah. We're going to look into the first miracle of Messiah. We're going to deal with his words that he actually spoke, and we're also going to deal with the circumstances and the situations that caused him to speak, and talk about some significances, spiritual significances of them all. So let's go ahead and pull up for us here John Yochanan chapter 2. And what we're going to do is we're going to read verses 1 through 11.
It says, "And on the third day there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Yeshua was there. And both Yeshua and his taught ones were invited to the wedding. And when they were short of wine, the mother of Yeshua said to him, 'They have no wine.' Yeshua said to her, 'Woman, what is that to me and to you? My hour has not yet come.' His mother said to the servants, 'Do whatever he says to you.' And there were 6 stone water jugs standing there, according to the mode of cleansing of the Yehudim, each holding 2 of 3 measures. Yeshua said to them, 'Fill the water jugs with water.' And they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, 'Now draw out and take it to the master of the feast.' So they took it. And when the master of the feast had tasted the water that had become wine, and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom, and said to him, 'Every man at the beginning sets out the good wine, and when they have drunk, then that which is poorer. You have kept the good wine until now.' This, the beginning of the signs Yeshua did in Cana of Galilee, and manifested his esteem. And his taught ones believed in him."
Okay, very good. Very good. So, first we want to look at over here some things that we see over here in the beginnings here of this chapter. It's interesting when we look at the interaction here between Yeshua, the man Yeshua, and his mother. We're able to see a few things here. I think that when we look at chapter 2, these verses here that we read, I think there are a few examples in the scriptures where we're able to kind of see a human side of Messiah. One of the very famous human sides that we see of Messiah, the one that probably most people think of, is when he is in the Garden of Gethsemane, crying out to his Father in heaven, and he says to the Father, could this cup pass from me? Right? When we think about the humanity, the human side of Yeshua, we automatically think of that, because at that point there's kind of this distinction that's made. typically when we hear Messiah, Yeshua speaking, we might as well be hearing the Father speaking, right? He literally is the word of Yahweh, right? But a few places in Scripture we're able to see where there's seemingly the human side of Yeshua. So that's one thing that we see over here in these verses, the human side, and we'll speak more about that. Another thing that we notice, it seems that he wasn't quite sure if he was supposed to react here or not. Right? He says to his mother, my hour has not yet come. But then he did something too after that, right? And so there was hesitation, maybe, unsurety. We'll discuss. We'll see what we're actually able to call that. And so that's another thing that we see over here. And so it's interesting. It's interesting when we look at the interaction between, as I said, Yeshua's mother and him, because she has kind of this gentle nudging here. It's a gentle nudging. She didn't say for him to do anything, like literally. She didn't like explicitly say, you should make some more wine. You should perform a miracle. You should go to the store and buy some more wine. Like she didn't like say what she wanted to be done. She made an observation. But we know based on his response that this observation was in fact this gentle nudging.
Well, Africa just texted me a question.
What was the question? Let's hear the question.
What happened if Hissy started calling my mother?
Well, exactly. We can talk about this now. We know that this was a gentle nudging because of the way that Simon responds. He responds with a rebuke, really. It was a firm rebuke. We know this because he says to his mother, he says, "Woman,
What does this have to do with me?"
what is that to me and to you? What business is it of mine or of yours?"
Yeah.
Woman, he says. When we think about this again, he's talking about his mother, right? And it's interesting. We see an interesting kind of dynamic here between son and mother. First of all, we have a grown man here, okay, not a boy. And so to answer Africa's question, if he was still yet a boy, that would not have been the proper response. And young boy Hiskey should never speak to his mother in that way. But what we see with the master Yeshua here as a man, he's a man, no longer a boy. And so we see that, first of all, he is Messiah, so that he lived a life that was according to the law, statutes, and commandments. And so he kept the fifth commandment here, and he did in fact honor his father and his mother. But again, when I think about the fact that he was in fact a man here. He's no longer kind of underneath of his mother, right? He's transcended this situation. So a relationship, the relationship between a father, a mother, and a son, there's a shift that happens here, right? And this is something that something that is important for us to be able to understand. A mother at the beginning stages of the child's life is to direct, to mold, to shape, to instruct, to correct, right? All of these things as regards to her son. But once he becomes a grown man, she's done all that she can do.
Yeah.
And so the way that she can properly communicate with her grown son is the way that she did it.
Yeah.
She gently nudged. There was a gentle nudge. She wasn't telling him what to do. She was bringing something to his attention. She, in fact, did have hopes of him doing the thing that she was asking, subtly asking for to be done. But she, as I keep on saying, was she just was gently nudging,
Yeah.
right? And so Messiah, interestingly enough, even though we see what he says here, what is that to me and to you? My hour has not come. It's interesting that when we see, to me, or maybe someone else might have some other thoughts on the matter. Again, why we say that this is Messiah having this moment of humanity, because as a man, I think it seems that Yeshua the man wasn't quite ready. And he actually needed that gentle nudging from his mother. Almost as if we're able to experience the Ruach activating here. Because we don't see moments like this as it relates to Messiah. Messiah, he's all-knowing. He knows the hearts of people. He makes responses to people and they're wondering, I thought that, but I didn't say it out loud. How does he know the thoughts of a person, right? We see Messiah 2.0, but this is almost like Neo, like when he's just like he has all of this potential, but it hasn't been realized yet, right? Here. And so it's interesting when we look at this kind of interaction that goes on between Messiah and his mother, when she says to him, there's no wine. Like, what's that even mean? Like, what was he? Were they working? Was he the bartender? Was he like was he like a servant here where it's his responsibility to go and get the wine? Oh yeah, the wine ran out. It's time to go grab some more.
Yeah.
Like what was going on here? But
I've heard some say that he must have done this before. Because why would she expect him to be able? Yeah. Like, it's like an unreasonable request to go up to just anybody and be like, "There's no wine." Like, what are we supposed to do? Like,
Go to Wine and Spirit real quick.
there wasn't no store.
Before they close, because they going to be here. It's like, no.
They about to close in 10 minutes. Go
Yeah.
hurry up and get over there.
Yeah. So when we look at it, like, what was she expecting for him to do? Maybe this is something that maybe they ain't bought wine in 10 years. And all they do is go to the well and Yeshua just turn it into. Maybe she was recalling that. I don't know. What's the comment here? Hamashiach had supreme foreknowledge. He knew the time before the time. I agree. Messiah is, in fact, the manifestation of the Most High in the flesh. I agree that. But let's also look at this. Let's look at this because I think this is important. Let's add this to the mix. Luke 2:52. Read. Luke 52.
Says, and Yeshua increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with Elohim and men.
Okay, very good. So we have to distinguish the few distinctions that are given between Yeshua, the man, and Yeshua in his divine nature. There's not many places where we see this distinction. Most times we think about Messiah. He is, we have verses like where it looks over in let's see here, John chapter 1. John chapter 1. Verse 3.
All came to be through him, and without him not even one came to be that came to be.
Anything that came to be didn't even come to be outside of him. He is the Word. He was with Elohim, and he was Elohim. So there's that. But then we have in Luke 2:52 where it talks about the fact that he increased in wisdom and stature. He grew in his body and he grew in wisdom, which is the Ruach. And in favor with Elohim and man, is what it says in Luke. And so Yeshua the man, there was a maturation that occurs. Yeshua the man. And so there's few places where we're given these distinctions between Yeshua the man and Yeshua in his divine state. And so when we think about over here in chapter 2 now, where we're looking, where it talks about where we have these words here, this situation where there's no wine, and she goes and says to him. Now, it's interestingly enough, when we think about the Catholic Church, they look to this, and this is their justification for Mary being the Queen of Heaven.
Really?
Yes, because she told him what to do. She told him what to do. And these people were blessed because of what she did. And so they look at this, and and she, among other things, she is qualified as the Queen of Heaven, as she instructs here Messiah. And so it's interesting, people's interpretations of things. But when we look at what's here in the text, Messiah again, with this whole woman thing over here, when he says to her woman, he's, again, she said what she said. They have no wine. She didn't say go and do this or that. She's stating facts. Right? And then now Messiah is, dealing on a higher frequency, right? And sees what that means. Like, I just got to say this in public. Sometimes I'm frustrated with my wife. Because I don't want to always have to say everything. Like, I want to be able to just have this unspoken thing. Right? But she's so literal. Where if I want something, it has to be like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We don't have the unspoken, like, subtext thing happening. Yeshua and his mom over there had that thing. Mm-hmm. The subtext. The thing that was said without being said. Right?
She said they don't have any wine. He knew exactly what.
Yeah. Oh, you want me to? What I look like up in here? And so, but it's interesting what we see. I don't know. I don't know if it's hesitation. I don't know if he did what she wanted, exactly what she wanted for him to do, or some kind of alternate version of that. But it's interesting when we look at the fact that, the way that he does do it is a way that is kind of discreet. The mother said to the servants, do whatever he says, whatever that means. Right? So the servants knew what happened. The disciples knew what happened because they believed even more. It says, right? It says down in verse 11, his top ones believed in him. So they knew, the servants knew, but the people didn't know. Right? So maybe when we look at this whole thing with Messiah saying, my time has not yet come, maybe he was only dealing with the fact of miraculously changing this water into wine so that everyone was able to see him, like him going and saying, by the power that is invested in me, like this ceremony thing. Like, he didn't wave his hands over the water. He didn't touch the water. The people went and got the jugs, they filled it up, and they take the thing that you filled up over to the man. He was barely involved in it.
That's power.
Yeah.
You didn't have to put any stick in the water.
You have to touch the water. He didn't touch the water. He didn't wave anything over the water. He didn't speak to the water. He didn't spit in the water. He didn't do anything. He sent them to go and do the thing. Right? And so maybe when we think about him saying, my time has not yet come, that's only in regards to him performing these miraculous miracles openly, as he straight away begins to do after this moment. But I'm saying, as a man, I think we see Messiah here literally coming out of his flesh all the way, right here. The way that he knew that he was supposed to do. Like, for his mother, maybe she, in her mind, with the way that she was, because she heard from the Most High. She heard from the Father. I could say that. She heard from the Most High. And so let's not forget that part. She heard from the Most High, but maybe it wasn't as clear. Maybe she knew that something was supposed to happen, but not exactly what or how, to what extent. And Messiah just had to say, it's not going to be like what you think it's going to be. Because he does kind of this secret, discreet miracle here.
I mean, he didn't ever tell her he was going to do it before, at least in the text, before she goes and tells them whatever he tells you to do it. Whatever he says, do it. Like, there isn't a time that it's like, he that he says, okay, like, she already knows that he's going to do it. And so in that way,
So is she like in tune with the spirit?
in that way, I believe it is prophetic, you know?
Here, put some more water in that for me. Is she in tune with the spirit there? Or is she just taking some liberties?
I think she's in tune with the spirit, right? Because she knows this is the time right here.
Let's see what this comment here says. Also feed 5,000 with 5 fish and 5 loaves of bread. Now that's a lot of fish sandwiches. Yes, in fact it is. But it's interesting. It's interesting when we think about. I haven't read that in a while, but I think he takes the stuff that's there, he blesses it and says, pass it out. And then when it's done getting passed out, there's extras left over. And we're talking about 5 loaves and 5 fishes. And so even in that situation, it's not like fish and bread is falling out from the sky. It's a miraculous situation. But at the end of the day, he's taking this small amount and starts passing it around, and next thing you know, it just keeps on going. So it's a grander thing, but it is kind of discreet. Where he doesn't stand before everyone, I'm going to feed everyone with this little bit of thing, I'm going to manifest my power. Right? He just blesses it like you would bless some food and passes it around.
He provides for the people without making a show for it.
That's it. He's not saying, look at the things that I could do.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe his mother in front of everyone, hey, there ain't no wine.
Yeah, it's an observation.
And he's like, slow down. Like, we don't want everybody all in the mix. Like, because he's humble, right? And so it's interesting that when we look at this, for me, when I look at it, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on here. I'm not sure if there's some type of hesitation with Messiah. I'm not sure if his mother's pushing him into a place where he's not ready to go, and he just goes anyway. I don't know what the situation is. We don't have much here, but it seems to me, again, understanding who Messiah is, and for the way that this interaction even happens, it seems as if, when you think about it, the Most High put the woman here to help. He put the woman here to help the man. That's what she's here to do. And it's interesting when we see her, the mother here, operating in this role. Because as a man, he needed that gentle nudging here. It seems. because she could have really been like how they be.
So the gentle nudging. So you're saying that it was obvious that they needed wine and he wasn't acting on it. So her initiative to say something, or is that what you kind of saying?
Yeah, I'm saying that the things that she says, which is they have no wine, the way that he responds helps for us to understand that he knew when she said they have no wine that she was expecting for him to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
It was an expectation of that.
Without her literally saying, could you go ahead and do this or that?
Yeah.
But she's what's she doing? She's signifying over here.
No, I was just saying that, like, I like what you said about it not being this publicly, like, performed miracle like what a magician would do in front of everyone.
Yeah.
To get all this attention, because the head waiter didn't even know where the wine even came from.
Yeah, just the servants that filled up the jugs knew. It was the only one, like nobody knew. But people knew. I mean, the same thing, when you think about it, the more you think about it, even though he did miraculous things all over the place,
He told people to be quiet about it.
he always told people not to tell nobody. I mean, but it's hard to hide the fact if you've been blind your whole life, now you seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how
You've
did
been
that
a mute
happen?
your whole life, now you talking.
Mm-hmm.
You've been deaf your whole life, now you can hear me talking about you. It's hard to hide it. If you was dead yesterday, now you're alive. It's hard.
It's hard not to tell everybody.
But his MO forever was that. He always was like, just keep it on the low. People was never able to keep it on the low, even here. The simple fact that we have the story, somebody was like, yo, remember we was at that wedding and the wine ran out and then all of a sudden we had the good wine after that?
Like,
Yeshua did that.
yeah,
Yeshua did that.
unlimited.
He had us go out and fill it up with water. Next thing you know, it was wine.
Yeah.
Ain't that crazy? Nah, that ain't happened. No, yes, it did happen.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying that it was always this. So maybe the way that she did it was like in the open, even though she wasn't saying the thing, but she's like, Yeshua, they ain't got no wine. Like he's over there, Yeshua, they ain't got no wine. He's like, woman, what that got to do with me? And then she quietly talks to the servants. Just go do whatever he say to do.
Yeah,
He gonna
because
take care of it.
at this point, she got experience with what he's able to do. You know, it talk about how, not the books can't contain all the things that he was doing.
Yeah.
So people, he was known to do. You know, he got a reputation for this. So yeah, she was just asserting it like.
They probably didn't have food. They was like, call Yeshua. Where's he at? He can make something out of nothing. Like,
Yeah. And it's interesting you say something out of nothing because water isn't wine.
no, it's two different people.
Wine isn't a derivative of water. Right? It's from juice. It's like juice from a fruit. Well, we could say that there's water in a fruit, but you can't take water and it be wine.
You can.
Can you make vinegar?
No, it's
You
still
can make
it's
the
still
probiotic
juice.
water.
It's still juice.
Yeah, to the whole process
Like if
of
I-
making wine, to do it
There's
like
water
instantly.
I guess
involved.
fermented water. would
There's
not
water
be
involved in wine, but water isn't wine. It could never be wine. Well, no, you can't ferment water because there's nothing but
There's not
water.
any sugar.
There's no sugar in it.
You gotta add sugar to the water or you
Yeah.
Now see
Go ahead.
what you talking about.
yeah,
For instance,
that's true. You gotta put some
if
sugar
you
in
take
it.
the final composition, elemental composition of wine.
Mm-hmm.
Take the water. That was probably his base, and he got this clearly has the spiritual ability to just add whatever elements to give it, to add whatever for it to just turn into the final product.
Well, yeah. That's why it's a miracle, because he miraculously took this final product from a thing that, from a molecular structure ain't that.
Exactly, right.
And so he caused something that wasn't. He caused that to be something.
Mm-hmm.
Totally something different. And so it was a miracle, but the more we sit up here and talk about this, the more it lets you see that Messiah was always the same.
Yeah.
And it seems like maybe his mother might have been kind of putting things on Front Street, where all he did was, I'm going to do it, but just don't be sitting up here putting me on blast like that. Like,
just come and
woman.
say it quietly.
Like,
ask me.
like you just
secretly.
pull me to the side. Like, you getting a little bit too hype about this. Woman.
She knew what kind of wine it was gonna be too. Like, she knew it was gonna be.
She was so excited. This is
Like,
funny.
oh, there's some more
This is
wine.
funny.
I
She was
know.
dry begging for
Yes.
more wine. Because she knew that he could make some top shelf out of
Out of some water.
out of some water. Some dirty. It don't even got to be good, clean water. That's funny. What did this say here?
You missed,
Perhaps he
you missed
meant
one.
Perhaps he meant that his hour to be revealed to men as Mashiach has not yet come. In Luke 7:22, this is still a question. Let's see what Luke 7:22 says.
Sorry.
It says, and Yeshua answering said to them, Go, report to Yochanan what you have seen and heard. Blind receive sight, lame do walk, lepers are cleansed, deaf do hear, dead are raised. The good news is brought to the poor.
Yeah. Yeah, and so when we look at Yeshua and the things that he did, he was always performing miracles, but he wasn't trying to blow up too fast, knowing that he wasn't able to stop things altogether, but he didn't want for things to kind of get out of hand too fast, because he had to go through all of the things that he had to go through. And so it's just really interesting when we look at this situation over here with this conversation that he's having here with his mother and the miracle that was performed. And so not only do we deal with the words that were spoken by Messiah, but also the situation that caused him to speak. Was it just a coincidence that the first miracle of Messiah happened at a wedding, when in fact when we look at kind of the spiritual significance of Yeshua and what he has come to do, and the way that he deals with us, his people, the relationship that he has with those that that are believers in him. Why, when he's spoken of as the husband and his body the wife, is the first place that he does this miracle, a wedding. To me, I think it means something. Maybe it don't mean nothing. But to me, I think that it's like a message in itself. Just a simple fact that the first time that he publicly manifests his power is at a wedding. So let's talk a little bit about then the whole idea of weddings, the way that they were done. You mentioned the wrong verse. You said
That was some glass. What happened?
okay. Hold on one second.
It's okay. It's okay. Nobody's wrong.
Okay, so let's go over to Luke 20 here, this verse that you put here. Let's see what you got here. When the men were come unto him, they said, John the Baptist has sent us unto thee, saying, art thou he that should come, or look we for another? Yes, there's times into the ministry of Messiah down the line where there are those who still don't know who he is. The reason why he is killed by the Romans is because the people that were in charge of things didn't know who he was. So the whole time that he was here, there was people who didn't know who he really was, right? Because even at that time, it was his time had not yet come. That's something that would have been true the whole time he was on the earth. His time had not yet come. Because in the fullness of his time coming, it's going to be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Okay, so let's talk about the idea, because I think it's important that Yeshua performs his first miracle at a wedding. I think that is important. So let's think about the idea of weddings. It's not until later times in history do weddings kind of go down like how they do now in these days and times, where the coming together of the man and the wife is this huge thing that's really centered around the wife in these days and times, where this is her big day, right? She's the one that comes down the aisle with great pomp and circumstance, with a veil over top of her. You don't see the beauty that hides beneath the man. He's already down there waiting. Everybody sees him down there, and the special song is played, and she comes down and meets him and everything else. It's only in later times, recent times, that's the way that a wedding was set up. If we go back to these days, a wedding, really, there was parts. There was separations. There was parts. Betrothal is not like engagement, like how we know now. Like when somebody says, "Will you marry me?" and put the ring on the finger, and then you're engaged until you get married. It was only kind of like that. A betrothal from the ancient times when we deal with talking about the way that they would have been operating back in this time when Yeshua was here. If there was at a wedding and there was a party, there already was a betrothal. And this was the final stage of the situation over here. And they partied probably for a week here. And this was the final consummation. But that's not to say that the betrothal, because it didn't happen. They just didn't talk about that. And so when we look back at the betrothal, a woman was legally married. You was legally married, assigned to, dedicated to a man at that point when that payment is made. And even though she remains at the father's house after the payment has been made, she could not belong to anyone else unless she was actually divorced from the one that she was betrothed to. You had to be divorced from someone, even if you're just betrothed. And I should never have said just, because betrothal is marriage. There's a binding that happens. The man goes and he pays his mohar. He pays his dowry, his price to the father, and she's his. But he got to go and get all of his affairs in order. So he pays the price, and he goes and he sets up camp. He goes and gets everything ready because they're gonna be enjoying one another for a year. If he's in the army or something like that, or not for that first year, he ain't. He's just gonna be gladdened by his wife for a year. But he got to prepare for that. How am I supposed to just take off of work for a whole year? Unless I get myself together first and be ready. But that's how they did it. He goes, he pays the daddy. Here you go, sir. Thank you very much for your services. I'm gonna be back when everything's right. And he don't gotta be up there and say, well, I'm gonna be back at this date and time. You don't necessarily know when he coming back. You know that he going. He gonna take care of this business, and when the business is handled, he's coming back for what's his. But that's betrothal, right? And so the marriage was divided into two parts, and this is how they did it in the ancient times. Right? And there was a detailed agreement that was reached between families. Between the families of the bride and the groom. There was a detailed agreement. And then the wedding then followed that. So let's look over in Exodus 22. Because betrothal is marriage. Mary was betrothed to Joseph, but they wasn't married. I mean, there wasn't a wedding yet. And so that's why I was like, hold on. You got a baby? What? Whose is it? Because we didn't even dwell together. We don't even dwell together yet. Where'd the baby come from? They was betrothed, but they wasn't dwelling together. Mary was still really in the house of her father. Because they was betrothed, but there wasn't a wedding yet. They was married. That's why he was like, I'll take you, I'll put you away. I'll divorce you, but don't nobody even gotta know about it. Because that was necessary to happen because they was already betrothed. Let's go back to the Torah. We got to look at the Torah because that's where this stuff comes from. Exodus 22. Betrothal is marriage. 16 and 17.
16 and 17. And when a man entices a maiden who is not engaged and lies with her, he shall certainly pay the bride price for her to be his wife. If her father absolutely refuses to give her to him, he pays according to the bride price of maidens.
Okay, very good. There is an obligation. There's an obligation if two parties have come together to finalize the situation. But the bride price is the emphasis here, is the fact that you can't take a wife without dealing with the bride price, without dealing with the payment. That's like part of the situation. So there's a payment involved in a connection between a man and a woman. And so Deuteronomy 22, 25 through 29, what's that say?
It says, but if a man finds the girl who is engaged in the field, and a man takes hold of her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. But you shall do no matter to the girl. The girl has no sin worthy of death. For the matter is like a man who rises against his neighbor and murders him, or being. For he found her in the field, and she cried out, the engaged girl, but without anyone to save her. When a man finds a girl who is a maiden, who is not engaged, and he seizes her and lies with her, and they are found out, then the man who lay with her shall give to the girl's father 50 pieces of silver, and she is to be his wife because he has humbled her. He is not allowed to put her away all his days.
Okay, so it's necessary when we look at this, we see that betrothal, this girl was married that was in the field. The one that was in the field, and she got taken hold of by another man, and she's in the field. She cries out, nobody can hear her. The man guilty. The girl has no sin worthy of death. But the man, he has a problem because she belonged to someone. She was betrothed. And so when we think about this in terms of a connection between Messiah and us, we can understand the idea of betrothal. And this is why, by the way, when people talk about the fact that we're not in the new covenant, this idea here, betrothal, is one of the reasons why I would say that we are indeed in the new covenant, because we have entered into an agreement already. The Messiah hasn't come back. He hasn't returned, but that's for the wedding feast. The price has already been paid, and an agreement has already been made. And I didn't even rhyme that on purpose.
Bars.
And so when we understand this, and I feel like the Messiah wants for us to understand it, but that's why he did his first miracle at a wedding. He said, hint, hint, hint. Me and my mom gonna talk to each other without talking to each other, and I'm getting ready to talk to you without talking to you by doing this thing at a wedding. I want you to think about weddings and marriage. And so betrothal is a key thing, a key element to this whole situation. Betrothal, right? But also something that you just mentioned here is, which we talked about briefly, is the payment. There's a payment that's involved. And when we think about what Messiah has done for us, he indeed has made a payment for us. What does it say over in 1 Corinthians? 1 Corinthians 7. This is so important for us to understand. And I'm saying that in regards to the words of Yeshua, this is the circumstances, the situations behind what caused Messiah to speak. And so it must be important because it caused him to say things over here. 720 through 23. Chapter 7 down through 23. Oh, hold on a second. That's the wrong book. 1 Corinthians 7.
It says that each one remain in the same calling in which he was called. Were you called while a slave? It matters not to you. But if you are able to become free too, rather use it. For he who is called in the master while a slave is the master's freed man. Likewise, who is called while free is a slave of Messiah.
23.
Says, you were bought with a price. Do not become slaves of men.
You were bought with a price. You were bought with a price. The price that you was bought with is actually the blood of Messiah. Messiah, in fact, redeemed us and brought us back from our former master. And so we're able now to experience freedom because of the master who's freed us. Let's go to Isaiah 55. We're still talking about this payment. Messiah made a payment for us. He's betrothed us. We've made an agreement with him. We've entered into an agreement. A price has been paid. The most important lesson that he's brought here for us lies within a wedding, an adjoining of man and woman. Let's see Isaiah 55, 1 through 3.
Oh, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters, and you have no silver. Come, buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without silver and without price. Why do you weigh out silver for what is not bread, and your labor for what does not satisfy? Listen to me, and eat what is good, and let your being delight itself in fatness. Incline your ear and come to me. Hear, so that your being lives. And let me make an everlasting covenant with you. The trustworthy, loving commitments of David.
Okay, very good. So we see over here a very interesting concept. Everyone that's thirsty, there's some water here. If you got no money, there's food here for you to eat. There's wine that you could buy that's really bought for you already. And milk. No money, no price. This all-inclusive situation that you've entered into, you didn't pay for. It's interesting going to these all-inclusive resorts. You just sit down and eat. I mean, somebody paid already. But while you're there, it feels like it's free, even though you paid. You paid already. But imagine going to an all-inclusive situation and you didn't pay. You just go sit down at the table, you begin to eat. Your drink runs out. Excuse me, can I have another one? Right here. Buy wine and milk. Wine, you think about wine as joy and happiness and pleasure. It's not talking about an actual situation where they're like at this place where there's wine and milk, right? It's hyperbole, right? But it's talking about the idea of joy, happiness, pleasure, things that are to be desired. You don't have to pay for those things. They're being offered to you freely. They've already been paid for. There's milk, there's sustenance. The things that you need will be provided for you. You don't have to pay for it. It's already been paid for. You sitting up here weighing out silver, buying these things that aren't even bread, aren't even life-sustaining things. You're sitting up here laboring after things that cannot satisfy you. Meanwhile, the Most High, through Messiah, is able to provide for you all of these things. He said, Messiah said, seek you therefore first the things from heaven, and then all these things will be provided for you. And so when we're able to come to Messiah, when we come to Messiah through faith and enter into this agreement, accept the payment that's been made for us already, we're betrothed to our master, and that situation is a binding situation. It's a binding situation. It's interesting how people talk about the idea of, salvation and when is it? Was you saved? Could you be saved? Or saved like only future? But when we think about this idea of betrothal, connection to Messiah, an agreement was made, a price was paid. We think about it in from the perspective of betrothal, you're married to Messiah. So when he comes back, all he's doing is finishing off what's already begun. For you to walk away, there got to be a divorce. It got to be a severance, right? It got to be like a breach of contract. If you keep on going the way that you're supposed to be going, everything's good.
That's walking in the agreement.
You walking in the agreement. You already settled into the agreement.
Once you make that covenant, you confess and you start walking. That's the agreement, and walk it out.
And just keep on going.
Until
when these people gonna come up and try to, these suitors are gonna try to come up, sin suitors are gonna come up, and you're gonna say, "I'm married, buddy. I'm taken."
Yeah. I don't do that.
When sin sit up here and try to come and these wicked desires try to come and entice you, you say,
"Be friends."
We can't even be friends. I can't be friends with you. Something bad might happen if I sit up here and try to get cozy with these sin suitors. They're gonna entice me to do something that I don't want to do. Because you're betrothed to the master. Already. He paid the price. You're at the all-inclusive resort. You ain't got to pay for nothing. Because it's already been paid for. You can't do it. You can't even afford it. Because you came there and you don't have any money in the first place. Because you wasted it all on stuff that ain't even bread. All right, let's go. Let's go back over and talk about this other thing, because we have this payment that's made. This is redemption. This is redemption. Here, let's talk about redemption. The payment that's paid. Let's look at 1 Peter 1. 1 Peter 1 and 18. 1 Peter 1. 18 through 19.
Knowing that you were redeemed from your futile behavior, inherited from your fathers, not with what is corruptible, silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Messiah, as of a lamb unblemished and spotless.
You was bought with a price. You was redeemed from sin. Futile behaviors inherited from your fathers. Your fathers taught you how to be a sinner. Your physical fathers taught you how to do things that was according to your flesh and carnality. But you've been brought with a price that was paid by the precious blood of Messiah, who now is your master. But let's talk about entering into this agreement, because when we go back to this agreement that you make, think about ancient Israel. They was bought with a price, which was also blood. And then as soon as they come out, the first thing they do is go make an agreement. Exodus 19, 5 and 6.
It says, and now.
Hold on, Exodus 19. Oh yeah, 5 and 6.
It says, and now, if you diligently obey my voice, and shall guard my covenant, that you shall be my treasured possession above all the peoples, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a reign of priests and a set apart nation. Those are the words which you are to speak to the children of Israel.
He said, you will be my treasured possession. This is the way that a husband thinks about his wife, as this treasured possession above all peoples. There's all kinds of peoples out there, all kind of ladies out here. But you are my treasured possession. And I bought you. I redeemed you with my outstretched arm. And now you're going to enter into this agreement. This is what Israel is moving into doing over in Exodus 19, 5 and 6. He said, if you diligently obey my voice, he's about to talk to them about the actual commandments, the conditions of the covenant. The conditions of the covenant that are for this treasured possession. And so they're about to become the possessed of the possessor. They're about to become the possessed of the possessor. Here, let's look at this word here, because it's interesting to look at the word husband. When we think about the word husband, it's an interesting word, because we're just talking about a wedding, the thing that the Messiah did this first miracle on. Let's see what this is here. 1166. The word that's translated as husband is, to be husband, is this word here, Baal, to be master, to marry, to be husband, to have dominion over, to marry or married, by extension, the wife. Right? And so when we think about the idea of a marriage, this binding situation, you have the woman that is betrothed to the husband who has dominion over her. And so again, when we think about this agreement, this price that is paid, the relationship between the husband and the bride, when we think about our position in terms of being those that are betrothed to the Master Messiah, we live a life that is dictated by our Master. And when we think about this idea of living in this covenant life, this life according to this agreement that we made, the decisions and the things of the way in which we live our life is according to what the Master will have for us to be doing. These are the most important things that we have to be worried about in life. Are we operating according to what the Master would have for us to be operating? Even now, even though he's not physically here with us. But the simple fact that we've entered into this agreement and we're betrothed to the Master, it doesn't matter that he's not physically here. He right now is in fact our Master. He is right now in fact our King. And we live our life according to him. What do it say in Jeremiah? This is where they talk about the new covenant to begin with. Here, Jeremiah 31:32.
It says, not like the covenant I made with their fathers in the day when I strengthened their hand to bring them out of the land of Mitzrayim. My covenant which they broke, though I was a husband to them, declares Yahweh.
He said, I was a husband to you. That's because that's part of this whole binding covenant thing. Is a price being paid, an agreement being entered into, and there being a husband and bride relationship between the two parties. And so again, we have to understand that Messiah, I'm saying that Messiah, when he does his first miracle, we have all the things that are involved in what he said, what he didn't say, the conversation between his mom and himself. But we also have the things beneath that, the fact that he does this at a wedding that causes us to think about weddings and what's involved in a wedding. And it's significant and its significance with us and our relationship with Messiah. And so here, let's look at, lastly, I want to look at John 14. Lastly, two more verses here. John 14, 1 through 4.
Says, let not your heart be troubled. Believe in Elohim. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many staying places. And if not, I would have told you, I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I shall come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, you might be too. And where I go, you know, and the way you know.
He's talking using these words and concepts that are connected to betrothal and marriage. Don't worry, he's talking to his disciples. Don't worry, I'm going away. But we're betrothed. We're bound together you by faith to Messiah, and I gotta go away so I can prepare a place for you. It gotta be like that. But the language that he's using, the concept that he's dealing with, is this idea of betrothal and marriage. He got to go back and set up a place for us to dwell when this whole thing is finished. But you've already been placed in the way. All you got to do is continue and do the things that he's been teaching the whole entire time. Lastly, Revelation 19 and 6 through 8. 6 through 8.
And I heard as the voice of a great crowd, as the sound of many waters, and as the sound of mighty thunders, saying, Hallelujah!
Yeah.
For Yahweh El Shaddai reigns. Let us be glad and rejoice and give him praise, for the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his wife prepared herself. And to her...
Hold on. He said his wife prepared herself. But this is the wedding feast right here. The wife that's already a betrothed wife has prepared herself and kept herself prepared for the thing that didn't happen yet, but was going to happen. And then what does it say?
And to her it was given to be dressed in fine linen, clean and bright. For the fine linen is the righteousnesses of the set apart ones.
When we are joined to Messiah, when we're betrothed to him, when we experience his redemption that comes through the price that he paid, when we deal with this agreement, the conditions of the union, which is to walk in righteousness, which not our own righteousness, but the righteousness that he provides for us. When we join ourselves to our possessor, who is our husband, who is the master and controller of our life, when we don't do things that are outside of his permission. I'm using those words on purpose, right? We're betrothed and married to the master, even though we're not dwelling together. And so it's interesting that when we see Messiah and his first miracle, it happens at a wedding. And then when we deal with all the way in Revelation, when it talks about the joining, the physical joining together of the master and his people, where that's the thing that seals the whole deal. So we got a wedding at a picture wedding at the beginning, and a real wedding at the end. And so, again, we think about the words of Messiah as it relates to what we see over here in John chapter 2, 1 through 11. It's interesting that inspiration gives us this kind of thing to think about, which is so important, I would say, to understanding what it is that the Messiah came to do for us. He wants for us to be joined to him. He wants for us to understand the way in which that we're joined to him, that already happened, that is irrevocable at this point. It's legally binding at this point in the game. There has to be a severing of ties. We have to actually go and join ourselves to somebody else and sever our ties with Messiah and join ourselves to another in order to cancel this thing out. That thing is so binding. And so we now, it's not like people might say in this day and age, well, we ain't walked down the aisle, so I can still do what I want to do. But that's not the biblical way of doing things, right? We're literally joined to our master, and we have to live a life that is congruent with that. Okay.
Yeah. There's a comment.
Let's see here. What's it say here? The first and the last, the alpha, the left, the top, declaring the end from the beginning. Yes, hallelujah. It's interesting that even in this subtle way, Messiah for us has in fact declared the end from the beginning. This whole thing ends with a wedding, just like it starts with Messiah going to a wedding. So I want to encourage us all to, remember that we are in fact bound to Messiah, those that are believers and walk in faith in Messiah, and continue to remember to live a life that is as if your master was right here with you, even though he physically is not, but spiritually you are bound to the master. All right? Hallelujah. Okay, so that being said, that is all that we have to talk about for right now. We'll say to you, Shabbat Shalom. Hopefully that you enjoy the rest of your Shabbat. And Yah willing, we'll be back on next Shabbat to speak more about what it is that our Master Messiah has said. All right?
Yeah.
All right. Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.